Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. Today I've got Paul with me, and Paul and I are going to talk about it's an interesting title, 2FA or not 2FA. That is the question, and we're going to find out a little bit more about that. But before we get into that, Paul, where can people find you?
Probably the best place is on email. So paul.croker@18it.uk or LinkedIn. I've got a profile that makes me stand out, so I can't be that difficult to find.
Yeah, and I mean, LinkedIn is a good place to start. I mean, you've got a pretty unique name, haven't you? So it's not.
Yeah.
So Paul, before we get into the detail of today, why don't you give us a little brief journey of how you got to where you are?
Sure. So I set 18IT up about 3 years ago. I think we had 6 months run before the pandemic hit. So that's from a standing start. And before that, I was working for a pan-European space company, heading up their IT here in the UK with 2 sites. And we rolled up into a joint venture across Europe, covering all aspects of IT, including cyber, which is one of the points we're looking to discuss today.
So your background is very much an IT one, isn't it?
It is, yes. 20 odd years ago, starting for an accountancy, when I had people saying to me, I can't print, what's this 402 error mean? Can you fix that and make it go away? And I was very young without grey hair then, and I was crawling into desks and plugging cables and unplugging stuff.
RS-232 or stuff?
Yeah, no, it just moved away. Although there was token ring in the building I was working in, but it had been unplugged. But it left it all in there hanging around.
Right. So let's talk today about cyber and some of the more mundane things because cyber impacts us all, doesn't it? I mean, we're always getting spam emails and stuff like that. So let's go through. So what is 2-factor authentication then, or 2FA? If I pronounced it right.
Yes, you have. Yeah, there's different ways it's spelled and meant. So you get 2FA. And MFA. The MFA is multi-factor authentication, or as you said, it's 2-factor authentication. It basically means the same thing. It's tomatoes, just depending on what your sort of point of view is. And it's in essence, it's adding an extra layer when you go to log in to a portal. Normally on a phone, you might get a text, or you can get an app now and it will give you a code, and you just have to input that as an extra step to logging into the portal to make sure it validates you are who you say you are.
Yes. So for example, when I use PayPal, I mean, I have 2FA on everything. So if I go into PayPal and I buy something, I then get a text to my phone, because did you really authorize this? And then you get a number and then you type it in. The same, but this Restream which we're using is slightly different because there's an app, and on sometimes when it kicks you out and you have to go back in, there's actually a number that an app gives you to type that in. Is that the same sort of thing?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So there's different types of 2FA, shall I say, and in essence, it's just another way to validate you, because if the bad guys and girls, the threat actors, as we call them out there, have access to your account with your username and your password, most usernames these days tends to be like an email address. So they might have that piece already. So they only need one more piece of information to get into your account, and that would be your password. And unfortunately, quite a few passwords aren't very complex or secure, and we use the same one for multiple accounts. And that's how these people can get into our lives, by inserting them into these platforms we use. So having this 2FA is an additional free layer of security that just bolsters things a little bit more.
And why should we bother with it? I mean, it's. I mean, I have to admit that it's quite irritating because it just adds to the time that's required to actually log into stuff or authorize stuff.
Absolutely. So that is you're not alone there, Tim. I mean, I get it as well. I'm trying to do things in a hurry. It can feel like it's slowing you down, but we just need to pause and take stock on what is it actually doing. It's no different to when we leave the house at home. We lock all our windows and doors. locked the front door. We've probably got more than one lock on our front door, and we've got an alarm. And I had one person saying to me last week, "Oh, I've even got a recording system inside my house as well now." So you've got all these layers of security at home. We're just saying we don't need to add one additional layer to our social media platforms or these portals that we're using. And it's important because I call them threat actors. The threat actors out there are looking to piece together information about us that they can then use to try and get us to click on those phishing emails. So if they look, say, at Jenny or Bob's profile on social media, they can see that Bob's actually into fast cars. He's a bit of a petrol head, and he likes going to track days. So they might email him about track days and say, "Here's 50% off, click on this link." He's more likely to click on that because it's of a topic which is relevant or he finds important.
So quick question on that. Should we ever click on links?
Ideally, no, not inside emails. So it's another benefit of having what we call password vaults or password safes. So it's outside of your browser. It's a tool that sits either in the cloud or on your endpoint, your computer, and you store credentials in there. You can also store in there notes and URLs. So if I get an email, say, from my bank, and it says, "Paul, click on this link to check your balance or your sheet," I might be expecting that email, but I'm not going to trust that link. I'm going to open up my vault and I'm going to access it through that because that's my trusted source.
So whenever you're, I think most companies kind of work this out, and if you're getting emails with links in, they're probably spam phishing emails. And I agree with you. You need to go through the normal process of going to the opening a tab on your browser and going in the normal way.
Yeah, it definitely it might seem a longer process than just click on that email, but it's just, again, it's adding that layer of security. It's another layer on for your two-factor authentication. If you click on your email and you have them in a trusted vault, you're just reducing that risk.
Right. Okay. So and is this something that we should do on all of our social media accounts?
Yes, is the short answer. It doesn't matter whether it's a work one or a personal one. We're all at risk. And I think what we're focusing on at the moment in terms of the cybersecurity element tends to be when we're at work. We're also at risk at home. I'm sure we all know friends and family that have had a dodgy text come through with a link about DHL parcel or Amazon or something else. This is all linked into the same discussion here. It's about making ourselves more resilient and understanding actually what's going on. So turning on two-factor authentication on all of our online portals is a thumbs up, really.
Yeah, I had a text through the other day that was saying that I'd been tested positive for COVID, and or I'd been near someone who'd been tested positive, and therefore I had to buy a test. And it was a text that came through, not the normal app that we have here in the UK. And I'm sure that was just a case of they wanted me to click on the link, and then they actually said, you need to buy a test, which here in the UK now are £2. But of course, if I'd clicked on the link and I'm putting my bank details, they immediately have my bank details.
Absolutely. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to catch us off guard. Just because we work in the security arena, we're just as much risk as the next person. And there are professionals out there who are saying, yeah, I've been caught as well. Because they're getting smarter in their attacks. They're getting smarter in the way they're approaching it. So we need to do these basics. It sounds silly and it sounds very, very watered down approach to it. But when we get step 1 and 2 done right, we can then move on to step 3. And that's where we can really sort of like add an awful lot of value.
So in terms of what are the things that we need to do to make sure that we've put this in place?
So go through. I normally speak to my clients. I say just make a list of all the online accounts that you have or access to social media feeds, for example, and just go through them one at a time and just go through the settings and have a look for the MFA or security settings to turn 2FA or MFA on. Most cases it's free, and if it's not an option on there, you might want to consider if there's a different tool that delivers the same service as that one does, but more securely.
I think most social media, the main social media companies, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter all support 2FA, I'm sure.
Yeah.
PayPal does, Restream does.
Yeah, more and more
Restream
waking up to it.
which I can't remember the name of. Sorry, Paul.
No. I was just going to say you're absolutely right. There's the social media sites are doing that, but there's other ones like CRM systems, etc., where they're not necessarily as up to speed as some of the others. But it's a question you need to answer yourself, both personally and from a business perspective. Do I want to be using that service if they're not offering that as that security layer in the offering?
Yes, I guess yes. And yes, I agree that if they're not offering it, then I would be surprised if you want to use it, because it's going to get hacked. I had a really strange situation once about this person contacted me and said, somebody else is trying to hack your account. You need to give me your details so they can't hack me. And I went, and I was like, really? You're like, do you really think I'm that stupid? But I'm sure that they've they're trying it, because it's obviously worked in a number of cases.
Yeah, there's lots of videos that are doing the rounds of where people have been caught out. So there was an American talk show host. I think it was one of the big, I can't remember the name now, one of the big ones. And they were interviewing people in the streets about their password. Have you got a secure password? And they were just challenging people. And eventually the people were coughing up what their password was. And some of them were even spelling it. So it's about catching people off guard when they're not expecting it. And we need to sort of wise up a little bit more to what we're actually giving away. And yeah, it's interesting because they're always trying to come up with some new way to extract these information out of us, really.
Yeah. Yes. Always, and I'm sure it'll carry on, because once they find a way of making it work, it's one of those things. I was saying to my partner, she was trying to find an unsubscribe button on an email, and I said, "Don't unsubscribe." She said, "Why not?" I said, "Well, they only put that there to make sure that to see that whether you're available, whether you exist." I said, "The easiest thing is actually just to create a rule and let it go to your waste paper basket or your bin forever." Because one of the things that people want, bad actors, I say, when they send out, they have all these emails, they don't know whether they exist or not. Because you can imagine, if you're sending out 10,000 emails, how many of those actually get rejected? A lot. And so you don't know which ones actually work and which ones don't. So I said, quite often people, as soon as you unsubscribe, the fact is they now know you exist, and they can basically put you on the list, and they'll sell the list.
Absolutely, it's a real bugbear, because it's normally the best practice would be to unsubscribe from that a newsletter you might no longer want to get, and that there's questions around that, just validating that. But the threat actors know that as well, so they're putting that unsubscribe button, make it nice and clear at the bottom, because they actually want you to click on it, because as you say, it's not a legitimate link. It's a validation, and it's like, right, okay, well, this one's active. We've got one here, and this is now worth something to us.
Yeah. Because even if it's a case of just validating, they'll sell a list of active emails. So all you'll do is you're increasing the amount of spam emails you're going to get.
It has more weight to them as well, because they can then sell it for more, because they can go, out, we've now confirmed these addresses are active. So you don't have to check that they're active. They're already active. And I call it pieces to the puzzle. They'll start adding these pieces together, and that picture suddenly becomes quite clear. And the more pieces that they add in, they sell it to the next group, and they might add a few more pieces to it. And then in the next one, add a few more. And then before you know it, we can see what's going on with it.
So what about backup? I know that's something that's important to you. I mean, what about backing up our social media accounts? What should we be doing there?
Backup's really good. It's good because it normally, in the traditional sense, it gives us an offline copy of our data and our information that we can go to. It's like an ace up our sleeves. The only way at the moment I can see how we can back up our social media accounts is by going into the individual ones and exporting it to a zip file with a very, very brutal approach to storing.
Because on LinkedIn, I mean, I back up my LinkedIn account on a monthly basis. Mm-hmm. And you just go in but I've never looked at what the file I get. In effect, I trust LinkedIn that it's that it's something.
Yeah, you can get the data's in a very, very raw format. So it'll export it out. I think it's out to like a CSV file or something from the likes of LinkedIn, and you can see the email addresses, the contact details, etc., from people that you've got connection with in there. But if you're writing articles or posting information on that, that's not included in there. So I'm exploring some options at the moment to see if app developers are interested to create a product where it will back up our social media feeds, just like we'll back up our Microsoft 365 accounts or our Google Workspace accounts, where we get visibility in a nice report. We can see what's backed up. We can select what we want to have backed up and what's important to us. And the reason I think this is quite important is because high street shops, so like your hairdressers, your barbers, and your beauticians, they're doing most of their trade now online. They're using their social media platforms more than email. If their email is offline, they're like, oh, well, okay, well, we could probably last a few days or a week without that. We're more important about publicizing our stuff on social media, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Facebook, other platforms are available. That's where their bread and butter is, and that's important to them. So if their account gets hacked and it's gone and they can't get into it, they've lost all that intellectual property, all that IP is gone, and there's no backup of that. So they can't even create a new account and then know who to refollow or who to reconnect with, because they haven't got that visibility. There's no information there.
And I guess, there's so many things now where we're working in the cloud, aren't we? From booking systems to payment systems and stuff like that. Having an internet connection and that is so important. And as you said, having the various social media accounts, because my niece is a hairdresser, and she's constantly posting on Instagram in terms of, she does the hair. There's the fashion at the moment with the hair coloring, and she's a specialist at doing that, and she's forever posting those pictures on Instagram and stuff.
Because it's where their target audience is, right? It's where they're likely to hang out. They're not likely going to sit there and scroll through emails, but they'll see the pictures and that rich content, and they're putting that information on there, which is good, and it should be there. But we just need a way in which we would back that information up the same way we would anything else in the workplace or any other data that we deem as being important to us.
So is there any other recommendations that you can make in terms of what we can be doing with, some of the social media accounts, or some of them, the PayPals and some of the things that we use every single day?
I just think it's important we don't put too much information out there. So I had to speak to one of my family members, because they tag themselves at home, and they tag themselves when they go on holiday to places where you wouldn't go for any shorter than 2 weeks. So it's just boxing smarts. It's just showing an understanding around actually what we're putting out there and what's the reason behind it. So Strada was another one. There was a lot of bike thefts because people were taking pictures of their bikes, and people were seeing publicly the route they were taking from home and then around and then back to home again. Oh, well, they're starting and finishing at the same spot. So obviously that's their home address. And that garage there has probably got a nice £5,000 plus worth of cycling equipment inside of it. So
there's a feature in Strada where you can actually set that people can't, that the starting point is within a certain radius is not visible.
Yep. And that's come about because of that, really. So it's just understanding what is it we're putting out there, and is there any sort of just quick risk to it. So it's a real quick sort of review on what we're putting out there. But two-factor authentication, it's that first run on the ladder. It's free to add this on. Yes, it's an additional step in the process, but no different to coming home and unlocking 2 or 3 door locks to get into the front door.
Yeah. There's the famous situation of various football players like Liverpool and Manchester United players who were playing in the European league, and they'd be playing in, they're going to be playing Real Madrid or something this week. So, and they get the house broken into because it's known that they're in Madrid playing football.
Yeah, absolutely. they're getting smarter out there. So we just need to move with the times and become a bit more agile. Not to say don't use these platforms, because it's like anything. There's a time and a place for it, and it's fundamental to some of the stuff that we're doing. We just need to get a bit smarter in how we're using it.
Paul, it's been fascinating. Thank you so much. And I need to do a check to see if I'm actually, if I think I have, but I'll need to do an audit again to make sure that I think I've got two-factor authentication on my accounts. Where can people find you? Remind us, please.
Sure. So I'm on LinkedIn as well. So if you just search for Paul Croker at 18IT, you'll find me talking about doing IT differently with a cup of tea and some rock and roll. I'm sure there's not many other profiles I've got that as the subject line. Yeah. Or just on email, paul.croker at 18it.uk.
Brilliant. Paul, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you, Tim. I've appreciated the invite, and it's great to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'll catch up with you soon. Thanks, Paul.
Will do.